City of Stevens Point Board of Water and Sewerage Commissioners meeting, recorded February 13, 2023.
And, well, we have a quorum and the computer says
Recording in progress.
So let's begin.
Okay.
Jamie will take the roll call as usual. Next item of business is approval of the minutes of last month. You were very diplomatic in your paragraph regarding my unhappiness, Jamie. Thank you very much. Any corrections or additions? If not, a motion in order to approve. Hi, Ray.
I'll move approval.
Second.
All those in favor signify by the sign of aye.
Aye.
All same sign. Motion carried.
I apologize, my screen's frozen. Great,
Oh,
but
gosh.
it's not critical, carry on.
Spin, spin, spin. Okay, on to the water department claims. Any questions? If there are no questions, we'll go on to sewage department claims.
Just a information question on 57452, dig for gas skid. What is that? What kind of tool is that?
Sorry, what is it say?
Oh,
Dig for gas skid. Good question. Rose mount.
Manual here.
What number are we looking at? 57452. 452. That's why I'm not looking at the right one. Rosemont, digester for gas skid. So it is,
it's not digging.
it's not, we're not digging. It's a, temperature sensor for our biogas skid that was shut down. That was the part we were missing.
Sure.
On, 57466 roof project, is that for our well 11 fiasco?
That one is gonna be worse.
Yeah, so that's gonna be the, dissolved air flotation building roof and the blower building roof at the wastewater plant. So that would not be the well 11. I believe you'll have a separate one on,
They've already paid.
that was
Yeah.
already paid.
So that project as a whole had, a water site and then 2 wastewater sites.
Okay, thank you. Other questions on the sewage department? If not, we're on to, stormwater. Questions? All right, and then the last set of claims are for the fiber network.
Just a question on the first one, from with Radar. It's freight for a fiber port, or is this the fiber port, or?
It is actually freight. We had paid the invoice and I missed the freight total, so that was just the cost of the freight for that port. We had paid the port on a previous.
Okay. Port.
I think that is essentially, we had shipped for a project we did recently some termination, equipment where you terminate fiber, you do stuff like that, so I think that's what that was for. Sorry, I'm catching up here.
And if my memory is serving me correctly, the $32,393 will be reimbursed to us by some entity or another, correct?
Yeah, all the Alexco stuff there, there is, so we have Parks paying for some, city paying for a little bit, the county paying for some, Plover Water paying for some. We do have some internal expenses ourselves, but on that 100 and some thousand, I think there was about 20 local costs total.
Okay, if there are no further questions, a motion to approve all 4 sets of claims is in order.
Second.
All those in favor signify by the sign of aye.
Aye.
Same motion, approved. Okay, on to capital operations.
Yeah, so I apologize for this stuff being in front of you now and not in the packet, but we did have some, kind of last minute stuff to look at. So the stuff that's handed out, with blue, red, and green, not the airport one, that one's another green, but I'd just like to go through those really quick, if I could. So if we start with blue, I put these in order of last year, then this year, then next year. There are some more years available, but wanted to focus on these. Everything in water last year, the one thing I wanted to point out is that the reconstruct projects, we always have amounts that vary a lot there, and we actually have had some conversations about doing this differently. When we estimate these projects, it's early enough on that we don't know the total scope of the project yet. And so, not only that, but we actually put other things into that expense that aren't in the original estimate. So we're gonna be, so for example, there's items that we split between utilities, some excavation, some, backfill, rock if you need to excavate it, there's like all sorts of things that actually get split up. And so we're gonna be revamping our process there, so that those look closer than that, every year. For the, if you look in the second set of estimates there, all of them across water, sewer, and storm on the Springbrook annual maintenance. Water for a lot of years has been listed higher than sewer and storm, but we just changed that to be a third split across all 3 of them. So you'll see current charges and future charges for that, one that was 22,000 estimate and 11,300 actual. You'll see that going forward as the actual cost there. So if we move into 2023, you can see on the top 2, these are both projects, the reconstruction projects and the repaving projects. So I'm on the second page of your blue handout. The note I put on the top 2 is that bidding will occur soon. That we're gonna change those obviously and bring those to the commission when those get opened and they go to Public Works the same night. So we'll put accurate numbers in there as soon as we have them. And then just some things like the Well 12 project, which is in there listed at 1.8. That's been ongoing for a while now. And what we're doing now is we're not putting any items in there and just saying, oh, they were approved last year, so, you know, look back. So we're trying to, if anything's rolling forward, we're going to put it in the current year so you can see what's out there, not just, hey, we had something approved 5 years ago, so now we're going to do it. So that just gets to be too much to keep track of. So the 1.8 is our estimated total project cost right now. And you can see in the column to the next, we've billed out about 126,000, and that's all been for engineering. We do expect that bidding documents somewhere towards the middle of the year, just after, you know, somewhere in third quarter probably, we'll go hit the street and we'll get bids back on that later this year. Some vehicle replacements, nothing unusual there other than the city has been looking at an approach with vehicle replacements that is probably pretty beneficial to some of our vehicles, and we're gonna proposing to try that here, where the vehicles that we don't upfit a lot will probably lean towards vehicles that have a higher resale value. So instead of like a straight cab pickup, we might get a 4-door and then recycle it every couple of years, because when we go through the government contract, that thing will have a retail value that'll either break even on our purchase a couple of years later or even be profitable. So we're gonna get some vehicles that we can recycle pretty frequently and then keep our cost to a minimum there because of the government break on the front end and the retail incentive on the back end. Nothing else super. I forgot a number in the Spruce Street. The bottom one in the first section there, Spruce Street, that's about a $17,000 expense. And that's an interesting one that's gonna help us get our lead service lines, wrapped up this year. That's boring a new 2-inch main down Spruce Street so we can reconnect to it, with new laterals. So it's, when you go north from Belts, and there's that little cul-de-sac on the west side of the road that doesn't go through, that's Spruce Street, yeah. Yep. And then on to 24, there's not a ton on there, although we are expecting somewhere in the near future, perhaps 24, repainting of Tower 1. And if we get into a conversation of reconstructing that, that's a whole different thing. But you can see that repainting that tower is actually going to cost more than what it costs us to build the tower right here. So if the cost, yeah, just because all those arms, there's inside and out, it's a really expensive process. So we might be better off to actually consider reconstruction, but we'll work on that as we get closer. Any questions on water? If not, I'll move on to wastewater. All right, so wastewater, very similar, with the difference in estimates versus actual. We're gonna do better on that moving forward, just out of a process change. The vac truck we got ordered and delivered. That's the third line down, and I wanted to just explain that one again real quick. The estimate we had on that was for the full cost. The actual comes in because what we did is we have two of these. Wastewater always owns the newer one, and Stormwater owns the older one. So we traded out the older one, which is owned by Storm. There was a $125,000 credit there, and then we bought what was then the newer one, now the older one, from Wastewater. So we recycle them down, and so that there's an equal share in that expense. That's how we do it. So we're showing a net expense of $276,000 on that. And if you peek ahead to the first sheet of the Storm one, we show a net expense of $114,000. So basically, Wastewater got a brand new one for $267, and Stormwater got a used one for $114, and we just keep doing that. On all three of these, and I didn't mention it on water, but I'll mention it now, in the middle area, computer and software, there's 2 more lines than normal. The ones that I got that Sewerage annual maintenance. Nope, I'm sorry, I'm looking at the next year. Let's go into 2023. If you look down at computers and software, the upgrades, the ESRI upgrade and the CityWorks upgrade, those are new and will only exist really in 2023. Basically, we scoped this out, and you guys probably recall that every 3 years or so, there's a huge expense on here for servers and stuff like that. It seems like every time we do a software upgrade, they tell us that our operating system is deficient, right? And so these expenses, what we're very likely doing is going to the cloud on these. And so it's a set of services and a set of purchases for software that'll get us from on-prem solutions to cloud solutions. And from that point forward, we won't have these $30,000, upgrades in servers every few years. We just pay for it as a service, a little more than what the annual subscription would be, but less than what it is combined with hardware. So that's what that is to move those to cloud computing. You'll see digester about at the top in 2023, starting from there down. The reconstruct and the repaving. I'm planning to always put those at the top of these, and those are the projects we do with the city, where everything, the top one is total reconstruct, curb to curb, and the repaving is where our utilities are generally fine. We might have some repairs or some small extensions, but in general, it's not a total reconstruct of the whole thing, where they're basically going through and paving. And the reason they're legitimately put on there for us is the fact that in a lot of parts of town, especially where there's no curb and gutter, there's a lot of swale work to be done because the sides of the roads are actually higher than the road. And so we need to go through and excavate and do that. And when you do that, then you expose your water manholes, and they're sticking out of the ground this far. So then you got to lower your water manholes, and you got to do, so we do have expenses on those projects. They're just not the 7-figure expenses like we've seen before. And then some, just look at it 2024 a little bit on wastewater. The big one on there, liquids upgrade. essentially, you know, that's one of these things where for our liquid capacity to grow, we need to install a selector basin, which we're using the first aeration basin for right now, right?
Yep.
And that'll give us back 4 aeration basins in addition to a more appropriately designed and constructed selector basin, which helps us with our BioP process. So that's one of those bigger ones out there. We'd get into some engineering and some better estimates as we get closer to that.
What is a selector basin?
By changing the ecosystem that our microbes live in, we are able to select the correct microorganisms that we want that treat wastewater well and still settle out well so they don't end up in the effluent stream going out. So our selector basin is basically setting up the right conditions to select, and not necessarily select the bugs we want, but more eliminate the bugs that we don't. It kind of selects for the bugs that we don't want.
Yeah.
Kind of gets rid of those.
Well, whatever gremlin was living in my computer is now gone, so we can actually share stuff now. Okay, and moving on to stormwater, unless anybody's got any questions on wastewater. And I do want to note on these bigger things, you know, there's, anytime there's a bid, we're not depending on this as our approval. For a publicly bid thing, we bring that item to you. So then at that time, we modify the capital. An approved bid is considered an approved capital change. Moving on to stormwater. All right, so 2022, just look back at last year, and the last 2 years of construction, by the way, the full reconstruct projects have gone over a year. So they weren't able to complete it in the year it was bid and started, they've gone over. So 2021 stuff was finished in 2022. 2022 stuff is not yet complete, but will be completed in the 2023 season. But these numbers reflect our bid amounts, so they should be very close. In 2022, the amount you see there for swales, the second item down, is just that was us accounting for some grading on that project to get those swales in, and that was over in the Ridge Road area. And there's that purchase from wastewater for the back truck as well. And then the same software stuff is on the others. If you go to the second page, nothing really flashy there. The one thing is that one of the vehicles we're replacing is in stormwater, and then we're probably due, years ago we used to replace our tractor backhoes every 7 years, and I think our oldest one, which is the storm one, is about 10 years old now, or will be. It's about 10 years old. I think it's a 13. So we're gonna take a look at where that sits value-wise versus maintenance-wise, and if it's the right time, we'll pull the trigger on that. If not, it'll just roll ahead until it's time. And then very little shown on 24 on that. So that's what I got. If you've got any questions, I'm happy to take those. Otherwise, just a.
Maybe I've asked this question previously, but my memory's getting worse. The new projects that come along, for example, well, you know what I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Is that a combination of discussions that occur at the weekly mayor's staff meeting and suggestions made by staff from all the departments, or where do the new ideas come in? You know, what I'm trying to figure out is, how do you decide that you want to go to 10 years on the backhoes rather than 7 type of thing?
Yeah. On something like the backhoe, that's internal to this department. We don't really talk about that outside this department. But on the big projects, we definitely have a ton of collaboration on those. So things that are real specific here, vehicles, equipment, obviously all the stuff across the street at wastewater, we do that as a staff, and we propose that as a staff in whatever way, either to accommodate the operation that we need, or to just make good financial sense, right? Because, you know, something like the backhoe, if you let it go 5 more years, it might not be worth anything, and we might put a ton of money into maintenance, whereas now we might get a pretty good trade on it, and we're not maintaining it heavily yet. So we try to weigh those. Sure. But on the top line here, on these reconstruct projects and on these swale projects, we have these meetings every week during the construction season, and every other week outside of construction, where all of the staff involved in these projects, so that'd be me and Eric and Craig, generally, and also, Jason and Dan in the back, along with, engineering staff, so the public works director and his, projects people, so it's another handful of people, where we get together and talk about these projects and try to decide, because they've got plenty of streets that need it, and we've got plenty of old utilities. And so trying to figure out in what years, and I've got some maps in the other room that lay out kind of a 5-year plan, and then even 5 more years beyond that, but they're not specific to what year. And that's a collaboration among all of us. But the tricky part is that until you get into, 30% of your design for that year, sometimes even beyond that, there's always something that comes up to say, oop, we got to change this. We got to do this block instead of this one because of this reason. So getting out too many years is good from a here's what we plan on doing, but the year prior, everything changes. And so the 5-year look this year will look different than the 5-year look next year, just because that's how things work. And we're on a pretty aggressive schedule with reconstruction of old facilities. So as we get several years down the road, that'll get to be even trickier process. But that's part of the reason why we're boring a new main down Spruce Street, because they don't need to replace the road. If they did, the utilities are old. They could use it. But since the road's okay, we're just gonna bore the main, reconnect the services, and wait it out until there's a time for a whole project, which is gonna be quite a while, because Spruce Street gets no traffic and it's pretty good shape. Yeah. So I hope that. Yep. Okay.
So just the new main that we're running down Spruce Street, that's the only utility that needs to be done?
It's not. We definitely need it on the wastewater side too. It's an old clay main. But our plan there is when we have a larger sewer lining project where we have several different sites that need it through town, we're gonna include that on a lining project. So by that point, we'll have new sewer, new water, and they can wait as long as they want for the road, because we won't care.
Any other questions?
Yeah, one time we had the visual run on those, laterals that run under McDill Pond channels.
Yeah.
Did that ever, because when you talked about relining.
Yeah, they're physically good, I mean, from what we can tell, but they're also at that age when we're not gonna wait for them not to be physically good, right? Mm-hmm. So we're gonna do some lining on all of our river crossings and things that, like some of our older lift station force main runs. We're gonna be looking at those in the years to come, and really what's probably gonna happen there is that on a year where the public works schedule is pretty low on road reconstructs or paving, so we're not participating in a lot of projects with them, we'll put in some lining projects so that year our construction dollars are put towards that kind of stuff. And we've got time there. There's nothing like critical, but also when you start getting over 50, 60 years on some of those things, you don't want to wait for critical, right? Especially because redoing a river crossing is expensive. So yeah, we got those in our radar. Yeah.
Well, the river crossing is expensive, but we've also got staff time, right?
Yeah, sure.
So.
Yeah, that's true. Every bit of new infrastructure we put in is easier maintenance and less staff time put into maintenance. So yeah.
One last question. You mentioned lead for Spruce.
Mm-hmm.
So where is the city with replacing?
We'll have all of our lead fittings, which are the goosenecks, out by the end of 2023.
Oh.
I think there's 37 remaining, something around there.
Give or take, yeah.
Give or take.
30s.
Oh,
We did, or am I thinking of the number we replaced this year? We replaced about that many this year.
Yeah, our crews this coming summer will have about 25 to replace, and there's 8, I think, on Spruce Street.
okay.
We don't have full lead pipe for services, it's just a little flexible hose.
Yeah.
That's about it, so classified as a fitting, not a lead service.
So going back 5 years or so, we had a little over 100 of them, and we've been getting rid of them.
Yeah.
And the way the rules are set up, if we have them out by the end of this year, then we don't have an abatement plan that's needed, and they're gone. So
I think
Nice.
we're pretty fortunate in that.
That gives you incentive?
Yeah, yep,
be something to celebrate with
yeah,
in some type of public announcement, because it seems that other communities, they'll get whacked with a lead pipe issue and, the whole town gets painted with,
yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
that type.
Yeah, and we've yet to ever find a lead service line, so that's really nice. It's just these fittings that are this long. So we find ourselves, as an older city, most of the older cities are having some real struggle with this, but, we're fortunate that the way it was constructed didn't involve that, so. Yeah, we'll take advantage of that.
Definitely.
Very good. We'll go on to the water supply and distribution report.
Can we get a motion on that one, though?
Oh, sure, I'm sorry.
I don't think we have one, did we, Jamie? Okay.
Move for approval.
One second.
All those in favor signify by the sign of aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Eric?
All right, good afternoon. As you can see, the pumping was a little bit lower this year, compared to last for January. That's because the paper mill was actually either partially or fully shut down, 24th of January through the 30th to do some repairs and maintenance.
Mm-hmm.
So they notify us, and that's where our lowest, date came. If you saw, the minimum pumpage was 3.7 million, and that was on the 28th. So that kind of ties to what I was gonna talk about from last month about how our industrial affects our total pumpage. So if you take the 7 days that the mill was down and you take that against the average of the rest of the month, it's about 11.3 million gallons of water that they accounted for that they didn't use. So if you put that into the rest of the month, it'd be about 190 million gallons. So that put us up to about what we were last year. That's why we were down, because they were actually down. And in 2021, kind of looked at the spreadsheet from last year, our industrial makes up about 49.3% of our annual water sales. And residential and commercial are about 16%. Those three alone make up 75% of our water sales. Other than that, that's all I had on the usage. Did anybody have any questions on those numbers?
I'm just thinking, like, wow, that's a lot of water
Yeah,
that industry uses.
crazy.
Yes.
Between them, the Lineage and, Donaldson are the big three. That's our big three users for industrial.
So, do you know why do they need, like, drinking water, basically, for what they do?
At the mill?
Just what,
Are you talking the paper mill?
Yeah.
well,
So-
all of them that are using drinking water, I mean,
A lot of it has to do with, so back in the mid-90s, and, Paul would remember this, the mill actually, sorry, I'm getting through the document here, kind of messy for anybody watching, is gonna be dizzy. The mill used to have their own source of supply. It was out on Patch Street, and they had to so chlorinate that water so that it wouldn't, actually discolor their paper, that it just wasn't worth it. They had actually, 2-ton cylinders, I think, of chlorine, gaseous chlorine out there in order to oxidate it enough that
okay,
the iron and manganese staining and color would come out of it.
and mess with the paper itself.
Yeah, and so rather than go through an upgrade of their system there and find a new source and then have to get it to the mill, because they owned a water main that went down Patch Street that we now use for a sewer force main, they actually came under an agreement with us for a certain amount of supply, guaranteed supply. It was on a 10-year contract. And then that's when we actually, about that time, we put in well 10, so that we'd have more supply in total, because as Eric just said, they use about half of our water. So it's the fact that the quality that we deliver is gonna be better than what they had available. And the same would hold true for the river. The river, whenever you get into surface water, it's such an inconsistent supply that you can't just treat it one way dependably and have the same product. Not only that, but they do on occasion deal with their intakes from the river, because they use some non-contact water for like pump seals and cooling and stuff like that. Their intakes will freeze up sometimes. So it's not dependable enough to run an operation of that size, and it's not high quality enough to run an operation of that size. Yeah.
What year was, well 10 put in?
96,
Oh, is it 96?
96, I think.
I just didn't.
Yeah, I think so. Either 94 or 96, because we had the treatment plant at well 4 put in around the same time as well, to knock down that iron and manganese in the system.
All right, is this, biannual evaluation part of item number 5, or is it 6? I assume it's 6.
5.
5.
Nope,
It'd be
6.
part of mine.
It's part of 6, yeah, I'm sorry.
All right, so let's go on to sewage and treatment operations report.
Yep.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. I'll start with my normal stuff and then we'll jump onto here. Wastewater plant met all of our discharge permit requirements for the month of January. The biosolids dryer did run the entire month of January, so from January 3rd to February 4th, January 4th to February 3rd, we ran the entire time. Very few problems, everything went very well, which is a great thing. All the guys are getting it figured out and understanding how everything works, and we're getting all the little things worked out with it, all the little tweaks that we need to do. So that's running very well. We were able to produce about 60% of the heat that we used for the month of January. That includes running the dryer, heating digesters, heating buildings, water heat, all of those items, anything we use natural gas for. Last month we had talked between, asking how much that biogas saved us in a month. The total last month was about $12,200 is the value of the biogas that we burned. So other than that, that was kind of the stuff I had prepared for the wastewater stuff. So if you don't have any questions with that, we can move on to the annual or the biannual lab report.
With the, drying operation, was drying, use biogas to,
As much as possible, yes.
okay.
How many utilities would you guess have a operation like that in the state of Wisconsin, Chris? Guess.
A guess, there are, I believe, 6 dryers, biosolids dryers in the state. There is I'd say majority of them utilize biogas in some way, shape, or form. To the extent that I don't know.
Yeah, okay.
Of the 1,000 or so, or 1,100 municipalities that have wastewater plants, to be one of the 5 or 6 that are in that club is pretty cool.
Thank you. All right.
So the lab report then?
Yep.
This is from previous meetings, right?
This is from, this was I meant to put this on last month, for January, and I forgot. So it is now on this one.
Is there any highlight in here you want me to just go to? It's a pretty long report.
Not overly. Basically, there were a couple of deficiencies and recommendations that they found. Nothing that would have questioned our end results. More or less just more paperwork kind of things, if you read through it. We were doing everybody who does these tests, does our back T water test, is required to do basically a spike test once a year. Since I started, we have been doing, way before I started, we were doing where it was a positive and a negative test, proving that somebody can run the test and get the proper results. We do have to be able to report for positive fecal or positive E. coli or positive both. So that's what the first item 1.2 is, just to make sure that everybody who's doing their annual spike testing has done those tests, that they come up a negative, a positive on one, and a positive on both. So that will be set up from here on out. The write-up, if you want to read through it, it's a lot. The next one was the temperature recordings of the incubator, just to ensure that the incubator is staying at a consistent temperature. Those need to be done at least 4 hours apart between either the initial reading or the final reading. And some of those were falling off a little bit. So we had a discussion with our operations staff at the wastewater plant and came up with a solution as to, hey, how do we get everybody to make sure they remember to do that? So between our water chief operator, Mike, who's setting up the samples, and then our wastewater operators, who are the ones in our wastewater lab taking that midpoint reading, we came up with some good ways to make sure that everybody remembers and doesn't miss a time. So we should be good from here.
And really, I think during the meeting that was brought up, he just mentioned we had our lab audit, and it was asked if there was a report. And he said, yeah, I'll put it on the next, so there it is.
Yep.
Yep.
I'm sure you know the comings and goings of your staff and how that works. It just seemed like a brutal solution just to leave a light on. If somebody walked by and saw the light on, and said, oh, geez, and turn it off on you.
And then you have people like me who's used to shutting every light off that I walk in and out of. And I walk into that room and I'll literally flip the light off and go, I can't do that, and turn it back on.
Mm-hmm.
So.
But maybe a flashing light.
So when it gets missed, it's probably gonna be my fault because I turned the light off.
Or install a green light or like something.
Yeah, occupancy sensor that.
Right.
It'll be a pretty cut and dry thing here. I'm not at all concerned about it now.
Okay.
Well, I think that the report is excellent, and that basically they're making recommendations to improve what we've been doing in our process, which is very common for any organization that has annual or regular examinations, is what I would call them. So congratulations. All right, then we want to go through the regular reports as well.
Yeah, there's just one in your packet here. It looks a little different than normal just because we're just gonna change it up a little and get some more information on the construction maintenance report. So that's there for your review, and we can answer questions if you'd like to, but the highlights that would normally be just kind of spoken verbally are here for construction and maintenance.
Any questions? Does that mean Craig will not be attending in the future, or?
No, he's off today. So,
okay.
Yep. And, if you want me to get into the next one, I will.
Okay, yeah.
Item 8. Okay. So a while back, we discussed, and I've been working with a company called MuGrid, as you can see here, to analyze how the electric generation through solar is going on the utility garage. And at the end of the day, it's a good thing we did. To highlight here, we have an inverter that I think might have been replaced last week. I wasn't here the day they were going to show up. Did Northwind show up? I'll have to check. But you see the total production in kilowatt hours in 2022 versus these. It's about half. It's in fact a little less than half.
What happened?
Inverter. Yeah, so half of the solar bank goes to 2 different inverters up there, and one of them was down. And there's not really a way of knowing that until you start analyzing it. And working with them was a way to get better data out of the data we had, right? So the instrumentation we have here will assume every kilowatt is worth the same amount of money, whether it's coming or going, and that's not the case. And so this whole report gives us some better info. But as you can see here, our savings throughout the year, and this is based on had we not generated our own power and we had to buy it off of the grid, here's the money we would have spent extra. And you can see that in the years where the system's working properly, we make more than what we need there. That doesn't mean we don't pay for anything, because you pay for it during the times you're needing it, and when you send it off grid, you don't get paid as much for it to go that way. So there's a lot of different ways to look at this data, and that's most of what you're seeing here is a different way of describing it. This one's kind of nice because you can see anywhere in orange the power we were generating was being used on site, and beyond the orange, the blue, we're selling back. So the blue really shows you excess. This is one that just shows savings. It's kind of a spin on the same data, really.
Mhm.
So that inverter was installed in 2019, correct?
Yeah, it went live in 19, yep.
So what did it cost to replace?
That is actually getting warrantied, so
Good.
I think we're paying for the labor and not the equipment.
So
It's my
if it
understanding so
were
far.
15 years from now,
Good question.
yeah.
I'd guess the unit itself is probably somewhere between $3,000 and $5,000.
Oh, that makes sense then.
Yeah, it's about the size of a dorm fridge,
Yeah.
you know, one of those,
Really?
yeah. Mhm,
Inverter.
yep.
So, but how do we, like, if they install a new one and it goes bad in a month, how will we know?
Well, that's part of the reason. So what we did with MuGrid, and they've been really great to work with because this is what they do. We set up a very small scope of services with them to get quarterly reports for a whole year and then to get their tools. So this is their second quarterly report. So what we're gonna do is see how they present the data, and then we'll try to do it internally here. And if we can do that without any big, lift of some sort, we'll do that. And if not, we'll just engage with them to do this quarterly for us, or maybe annually,
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah.
You know, since we don't get as much money per kilowatt when, for the stuff we sell off-site, is there an ability to use it
Yeah.
on-site at another building, say this one?
This is the building that, if we can, we're gonna bring onto that load. The challenge right now is kind of a funny one. If you cross a public right-of-way with power, you're considered an electric utility, and we are not. We are a water, a wastewater, and a storm utility, all three of those, but we are not an electric utility. So, somewhere right in here, we're probably gonna ask if we can vacate the road and give easements to the people that are at the end of the road, so that it's not a public, yeah. And then we'll get through the engineering department, I'm quite certain they'll grant us a revocable occupancy license to cross the road with electrical, and then we can tie this building into the backside, and it'll make the ROI look way better. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
So am I missing a graph or not misunderstanding about what our sellback dollars would have been?
Would have been?
Yes.
Well, I guess the very first one, yeah, cause the data, oops, I went way too far. The data coming out is coming out of the inverters, right? So essentially, you can look at the past couple years, and I hate it when that thing pops up. I don't know how to get rid of it either. You can look at the past couple years and see they're very solid, right? Somewhere between 131 and 137,000 kW. And we're just over half of that. So somewhere in 22, early in 22, I think it was March, that thing kicked out. So we based this on the average of these minus this is what we lost. It's a roughly half, 61%. 61% of our net production. But to compare these two to this one tells you what we lost out on. More accurately, doubling this would tell you what we would have generated. So we'd be at more than these two, more like 140, because they are split in half.
Well, I didn't phrase my question correctly.
Oh, okay.
Okay, you're talking about the expense, right?
No, what I'm trying to do is, that when we sell back, do we get a credit towards another utility somewhere, or do they cut us a check?
They take our sellback rate off of our current bill.
Oh.
So just generally speaking, these numbers aren't real accurate, but we pay 10 cents a kilowatt coming in, and they give us 3 going out. I think it's more like 9.2 and 2.3.
So that's,
Something like that.
that savings is a formula which includes that.
So this savings is actually all in the buy rate, because this is saying the power you used on site would have cost you this much if you didn't have solar.
Well, that makes sense.
Yeah.
But that also means we're making more money in the form of a credit for that which we're selling back.
Yeah.
And there's no dollar amount where that's listed.
That may be true.
And that's okay.
Let
me think about that for a
I
second.
was thinking I might have missed it in here. A lot of
Well, it
pages.
could be calculated, have that graph
Yeah.
says how much was,
Yeah. Oh, see right here real quick on the 2022. how the yellows are
Yeah.
going, and then it falls off, so it was March or April of 22 that inverter died. Yeah, the date's there, but you're right, I don't have one that spells it out specifically.
I'm just trying to give you more credit for what's been done here than what this shows.
Yeah, I mean, so there's how much more the bills would be, and then how much more that actually would have cost. So it'd be kind of that 70% difference, right? So I would guess that those numbers up above are probably around 70% of what they should be if you also count in energy back, something like that.
Okay.
But I'm gonna think on that a little bit before our next meeting, or before the next time we present this.
One observation going through all the charts, and is that, like, on this page, they don't have the years and months associated with it. So on my first pass, I was trying to figure out what is this showing me, because it's not 2019, 2020,
Yep.
2022
That was just
across the board.
data smushed up. So all of these are from when it went on in 19 till today.
Yeah.
So they're all showing the whole lifespan here, but you're right. I don't know if that just turned that way when I turned it into a PDF, because I do remember looking at dates. Yeah, that's an oversight on my part, I think. I'm sorry for that.
Now, I'm going the other way that Paul did, because I've been involved with a number of these payback projects with the state, and how they include in their calculations is the cost to install plus the maintenance, and then the useful life of the equipment. So, you know, it's sliding and it's being discounted. Is that figured in these calculations? All of a sudden, we got a rosy picture, but you know, if the system costs $200,000 to install, you know, we're paying off on that loan so much per year for the next 20 years, 15 years, whatever.
These numbers basically saying of what's the break-even analysis.
It's
because if we couldn't install these systems,
so you can see here, to me, actually, I'd be really curious to know what that looked like with 2022 going the way it should have, and getting into 2023. If it's fixed now, that's great. But you're right. So if we look at this, and this is actually pretty easy math, because this is about 1/10 of what it costs to install. Our maintenance to date has been nothing except for in the winter, because we had a really bad winter. We had some winters. I'm trying to think how this 19.
There's nothing on it, see that?
Like a lot of snow or something?
Yeah.
December.
Yep. That's the winter that we didn't blow them off.
Oh,
And so now we've got a backpack blower and somebody goes up and blows them off so that we get some production still. So that's the limit to our maintenance so far. So if you add, you know, if you look at that savings that's on there, 20,000, so maybe that would have been 25, right? It's not a great ROI, that's for sure, because if we've got 200 grand into these, and this is,
but if that was a 10-year payback and they last.
it's not though, because this is over the life of them so far. So we're looking,
4 years.
which is 4 years.
Yeah,
So you're looking at 40 years.
yeah.
And that's exactly why getting this facility to be on that same load would actually add all of this savings to those, because they're producing, right? And they're producing a lot more power than we need a lot of the day, a lot of the year. So that would turn that ROI on a much steeper slope and say, you're gonna get there quicker, yeah.
Well, that, and to understand if the other inverter dies.
Yeah.
I mean, we have to know that information.
Yeah, so there's all sorts of things like we handle wastewater on the stuff that is like critical process, and even all of it, you know, you got alarms, right? I don't know if we've got the opportunity to integrate this into one of our existing systems so we get an alarm when an inverter goes down or something, but all stuff to look at. This is our first project like this, so we're learning, yeah.
And the thing is, the state was always cautioning us on was the weak point in this is the inverters.
Yeah,
The equipment, the panels will last 20, 25 years before they need to be cycled out. The inverters, 5 to 7.
yeah, yeah,
So, and that was not an inexpensive item to replace.
right,
And they do go off warranty at some point, I suspect.
yeah.
Well, it's a good report, thank you.
Hmm?
Mm-hmm.
On to, the network report and your report, Joel.
I've got nothing new. I've been a broken record on the community area network for some time now, so I've got nothing new there. I didn't bring any notes on the director's report. I don't think I had anything there, so I guess we'll skip both of those this month.
You know, you may wanna consider taking the area network report off, and if there are questions about it, it probably would be obvious when we look at,
Put it back on.
the claims report.
Claims, that works.
Right.
Yeah.
All right, I need a motion to adjourn.
I'd be curious what happened on the transportation utility discussion.
Oh, I'm glad you asked, thank you.
Next to nothing, I guess is the best way to put it. So there was a discussion and the finance committee made a motion to forward the options of how they're going to, and if they're going to create another revenue stream to council. And then at that next council, they didn't discuss it. But then again, there wasn't a motion to put it on the next council agenda. It was just saying, we're gonna discuss this at council versus at committee, because that was at finance. So I think that probably near the middle of the year, I'm trying to get around saying after April, I don't know, you know what I mean? It's like.
Probably trying to wait until the mayoral election.
Exactly, yeah. I'm just guessing, right?
You didn't say that,
Yeah, I know, yeah. Yeah, so it wasn't nobody was in a hurry to talk about it in the same month. So I'm guessing that in the next several months, it'll get agended on council and they'll talk through what their options are. And again, those are transportation utility, go to referendum to exceed the levy, and a wheel tax of sorts. Now, in the meantime, they have heard good news. The state is approving a return of 1% of sales tax to the city, I believe, at some point. So the 5.5 that is collected, I believe 1% of that's coming back. I have no idea what kind of dollar that amounts to. But they've said that statewide they're gonna do that too. I don't know if it's just cities or if it's cities and towns or villages or whatever, but yeah.
So just so I understand. If elected,
Yeah, it would, and not to, so I don't think it's to every division of government, but for cities, because we're talking about it, I believe that of the 5.5%, not 1% of that, but 1%, so a little less than a fifth,
okay.
would be returned back to, municipalities, is my understanding. That, yeah, that's at least.
That's part of the state budget process?
Yeah, because it amounts to something like 360 million statewide. So what is our share of that? Well, we're like the 34th largest, so the big ones are gonna take 70% of that. So I don't know,
All right,
yeah.
and we'll see if it gets through
Yeah, we'll see.
timeline.
Yeah, right.
Now a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Adjourn.
All those in favor signify by the sign of aye.
Aye.
Pose same sign. Motion carried.
A video of this meeting is available for viewing on the city's website, stevenspoint.com/videos.